Good morning. It is Friday, November 22nd, 2024. This is Option Pit Live. I am Mark Sebastian. I am your only option, and I am joined by one Queen of the Candles, Licia J. Leslie. Good morning, Licia. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday.
That's right. TGIF.
Taking my kids to their first college football game tomorrow. They're going to go see University of Texas versus Kentucky. Should be a lot of fun.
Very fun.
I don't think Valentino's going to enjoy the cannon going off at the UT game, but other than that, I think they're going to have themselves a good time. So
UT being a resident now, they have a really good value. It's a phenomenal school, and if you're a resident, you can go for like barely anything.
No, I know it's a great value. The only issue is it's 20 minutes from my house, and I don't know if I want my kid.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
I don't know if I want him coming home on the weekends to do his laundry.
I get it.
But it's completely up to him. I'm gonna offer some guidance, but that is his decision to make when the time comes.
He needs to move from the nest for sure.
Indeed, I agree. I liken it very similar. Austin's a lot like Columbus, Ohio, actually, in that respect. Capital city, like real major sports. Columbus has the Blue Jackets, but really, and Ohio State basically is Columbus, just like here UT is Austin. But good morning. So as we open the show, Dow, similar to kind of yesterday, although things did turn around. Dow futures are up about 50 points. The S&P futures are flat, and NASDAQ futures are ever so soft. That looked like it was going to be the trend yesterday until Austin Goolsbee opened his mouth, and the market decided this is America. Stocks go up, and we took off.
Amazing.
This rally has been amazing, and I do want to get into this when we bring Andrew on, but some of the signs that I'm seeing in the market are starting to concern me in terms of companies that will have no long-term value exploding into by multiple billions of dollars every single day. The move in MicroStrategy in particular should be a little concerning. Speaking of which, let's take a look at some of your markets. Let's start with the S&P and that. MicroStrategy. We'll circle back to MicroStrategy, folks. Don't worry. But let's start with markets that actually do have value, and that's the S&P 500.
I have the S&P. Look it's amazing. I've been telling everyone that I go live with 58.62 3/4 is the line in the sand. Look at that. It was the previous high back here in mid-October, and it's the top of the gap after the election. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days it has held. Wow. Now we've broken out over that congestion yesterday. And look, amazingly, we stopped right at the median line there, 59.61. Close to that gap. Once we get over this median line, Mark, I don't see any reason why we don't revisit the previous highs.
I don't disagree with you. It's funny, you're that median line actually, that resistance line happened to also be the 21-day moving average, which is pretty
okay. There you go.
That lined up there.
I love when that happens.
Yeah, Qs. I'm guessing the Qs or the NASDAQ 100 almost the exact same chart, right?
Now, I also been telling everyone, put this upward trend line in the Qs going back to August 5th. It has honored it several times. It kind of consolidates right there. And that converging with my 497.57, basically 500, everybody's watching that. It held exactly there yesterday. I have a resistance at 508.35, just above here. And then we break through that, we again revisit the previous highs.
And
so watch maybe that 500 on the Qs.
And maybe the reason we're not at the all-time highs is that money is leaving some of these tech names for the crypto space, Bitcoin. Um,
Yes.
I think there's a clear asset reallocation here between stocks and crypto.
Oh, yeah. It hasn't quite done it yet, but just shy, 499, 543 exactly. Huh, isn't that
Yeah.
amazing? I thought for sure they were going to push it through, but then when they didn't do it by the end of the day,
There are a lot of long-term holders I've talked to that said they are going to sell some at 100,000.
is that right?
And yeah, and I'm interested to see one if they follow through. My guess is no. And
I was
then
going to say that. There's no way they are.
yeah, oh now it's 100. Oh, I got to hang on. It's going to 2.
Going to
And
150 at least.
and I'm talking people that own a decent amount of of these folks. This has been a pretty aggressive rally here in Bitcoin. I'm not saying Bitcoin isn't going to long term continue to go higher, but I think there is going to be some retrenchment here at some point. So what I mean by that is, if I sold some here at 100,000, I think I'll get a chance to buy some in the 70,000, some back in the 70,000s again. I do.
One thing I could recommend that you watch RSI.
Mm-hmm.
RSI is an overbought. It will stay in overbought until it crosses back below 70. So that could be a little clue. You may lose a couple thousand up there, but at least you know it. It's a signal that it's rolling down.
Yeah. So
RSI below 70.
keep an eye on RSI. If the RSI ticks below 70, that's a signal that the gig is up.
So speaking of, before we leave crypto, Mark,
Oh
I read
my.
last night Solana, the SEC is considering ETFs on Solana.
Oh wow.
How awesome is that?
Well, and Gensler leaving is a pretty, that's going to be very bullish for crypto. He was the anti-crypto SEC chair, and so I think that's pretty bullish. Now, one
Well,
name
we
that
get ETFs, and then next thing you know, we'll have options on them.
I
Also.
know I'm excited that
Very
they listed
exciting.
options on the Bitcoin ETFs. You and I are going to be getting with our deep market crypto audience early next week to start looking at some of the trades there, because there's some real opportunity in these crypto ETFs. There really
sure is.
They listed IBIT, but then the next day they listed on ARCB, on FBTC, several of the other major crypto ETFs also have options, but IBIT seems to have basically swallowed all the air in the room. It's getting about 90% of the option volume relative to the other ETFs.
Which has been a ton.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, they did start out with monthlies. Yesterday, they added the weeklies, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the stats yesterday, they've been trading these for 3 days, and the open interest is already 650,000 contracts. Folks, that is huge.
Amazing.
And
amazing.
the volume, 330,000. The call to put ratio has been hanging in at over 3-1, which is, again, pretty frothy. Pretty frothy.
Still, I love the volumes. It makes it easier to trade, right? It makes
it makes it
so
way
much fun
easier to trade. Speaking of volumes and easy to trade and overbought, let's talk MSTR.
Oops.
You got a space in between M and S.
Oh, like what's going on?
There we go. MSTR came crashing back down to earth. The entire business model, I disagree with their business model, is what I will say. Borrowing money to buy Bitcoin, and then, when Bitcoin goes up, selling more convertible debt to buy more Bitcoin. Right. I mean, let's think about this, right? I borrow money, I buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up, and I borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up. I borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up. That is what their strategy is. However, the amount of Bitcoin they own relative to how much debt they've got, how much convertible debt they have, and what the market cap is, the numbers don't add up, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything nefarious here, but what I'm saying is that I think the market got ridiculously overexcited about this stock, and with it at $500, the January, and I'm talking January 2025, so these expire in less than 2 months. The 100 puts were over $2. There is a reason that those were so expensive, folks.
Yeah. I have support down at 323.
All right. Now, what I'd like to do, because I want to talk, I want to circle back to crude and natural gas here in a second. But before we do that, I want to bring in our own Viking of volatility, the one, the only Andrew T. Giovinazzi, because he's been
Andrew.
really concentrating on energy with, overnight we saw that Ukraine fired more of these medium range missiles into Russia. I don't know. Is there a single person that thinks this is a good idea outside of a small circle of people that live in Washington, D.C.?
I mean, they invented a term, "don't poke the bear." It might have been the Russian. Like, I'm just, I don't know.
Does Russia still have bears?
Thing here is, where is the win? We trade, right? Okay, we trade. We talk to our students. Here's our trade. Here's the win. Okay, when we get to the win point, we close and we're done.
Right.
Where is the win for Ukraine lobbing missiles at somebody that has bigger missiles? I don't
it doesn't
understand.
Make a lot of sense.
Now, granted, the Russians don't want a barren landscape of dirt, but
right.
I don't see how this is going to end well. And I mean, I'll talk about that in my my trading vehicle a little bit, how I see the landscape. But I think that's the number one. That's what's keeping volatility up right now. Without this craziness, I think VIX is probably back to, I don't know, 13.5, 14. Trading
I agree.
closer to 17. And like, the bid for volatility was real yesterday. I mean, people were buying options again, and for good reason. I mean, what we had, I counted the range yesterday in SPY of like the up, down. Do you guys remember that morning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The range was $25 in SPY. So backspreaders paradise, Licia and Mark, in the old days, right?
Yeah.
Like, SPY down $5, buy some SPY, up $5, sell your, like, oh wow, I just made like a month's worth of money in a day scalping SPY.
Oh yeah.
And then it just rips into the close for like the extra,
Well, you can thank your boy Austin Goolsby for that, Andrew. So with the ICBM stuff, I wanted us to kind of break down what's happening, and I know you're going to talk a little bit more about this, but I want to look at Licia's charts on oil and nat gas here, because we've already seen nat gas take off, right? There is potential that there won't be a re-upping of the agreement that expires on December 31st. That's part of the reason natural gas is exploding. The spread between Henry Hub and European nat gas, you could drive it, you could float an aircraft carrier through that spread. You could. So nat gas still relatively inexpensive here, but over in Europe, it's a $4 to $5 higher, which is pretty significant.
Well, if you, it's got a little pullback this morning, Mark, back to some support here. It might be a good purchase. At the median line stopped it there yesterday. It's down about 75. Yeah, about 75 cents this morning. It might be a good purchase here.
I concur. I think nat gas. I think you're going to see a big push in LNG exports here over the next coming months. I'm not a energy expert, but I would say, just from an outsider's perspective, I would say our failure to invest in LNG export facilities is going to be considered kind of a fumble.
The MACD crossing over the 0 line is also bullish.
Oh, there you go. I like that. And then Andrew wanted energy. You're nat gas, obviously, with winter coming up. That's the first domino. The second domino you believe is going to be oil. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, like where the oil has kind of a floor on it. I think if you think about from this, now that this Ukraine thing has just gotten weird for whatever reason, and well, I'm not going to go into the politics of it, but
Thank you.
to me, the reasons are fairly obvious, but whatever. So, but now you have what's going on now, and then the inauguration on the 20th. So you've got kind of this period of time where I just don't see the price of oil dropping precipitously with all of this potential. In the last time we saw this kind of Ukraine-Russian thing, we did have pretty big supply disruptions. The thought of a potential supply disruption, again, oil's global. So I think at least until the inauguration, you have a floor on the price of oil. So I think you just trade it that way. And I think that's a trade. Like, the oil majors, USO, I would say even risk reversal style trades. I think I think the risk reward on it is really good considering all of this, it's basic continued nonsense. So it's something that a chapter that has not closed in, is it almost 3 years now? What, 20, 22, 23. Now we're almost through 24.
A little over 1,000 days.
Yeah, it's a long time. So it's kind of a festering sore. But I think from an oil price point of view, I think that's the interesting trade, just because, you would assume there would be a different posture going forward after Inauguration Day. But until then, it is now clear that anything could happen. All of a sudden, we had kind of a policy of things were kind of slowing down. And now it's almost like, we got to get in one last shot before we leave office. It's very
one more. Yeah.
And if you look at how volatility is trading in the broader market, VIX, SPX volatility, it's definitely going up with stocks going up. And and I know that's not our favorite brew. For long-term bullishness, even though, there are a lot of good reasons to be bullish. AI, Nvidia earnings, we haven't even talked.
I actually want to hit on that in a second here. But yeah, it's kind of like you're in a huge
oil
fight.
Trade. It seems to be, I don't know, at least until the 20th.
It's kind of like you're in a huge fight with your friend, and you're about to storm off, and then right before you storm off, you say one last really mean thing, like your face smells. Then you turn around and walk away.
Something to just really make it bad.
It's an insult that will literally stop people. And trust me, they have no idea what that means. I hate you and your face smells. Let's talk NVIDIA. And I want to bring Hans here in 1 second to talk about how he views this as kind of a long-term investor. But I wanted to start with the trading here. I thought the interesting piece here, earnings were great. Revenue was great. Everything was great. They came in. They didn't beat the outlandish expectations that were out there. But they were still great earnings. The reason why it didn't explode, everyone's like, wait, these earnings are great. Why didn't this explode? The analysts have caught up to the revenue growth. So people now know what the next quarter is going to look like. The growth and the growth is becoming somewhat more linear as opposed to exponential. And I was reading this stat. It's interesting. NVIDIA's been blowing up, but if you look at their suppliers and their buyers, so the people that buy chips from NVIDIA, I mean, folks, do this as a mental exercise. Who's buying chips from NVIDIA over the last, 6 months? Meta, Microsoft. Just take a look at a 6-month chart of Microsoft. Or Meta is fine too. You know, how's the
That
chart of
might be
Meta
a
over
buy
the
here.
last few months? I mean,
Down.
not that great, right? How's the chart of Microsoft over the last couple months?
Microsoft can't get out of its own way.
Right. Nothing, right? I mean, Microsoft's down pretty significantly, right? So those are just two of the buyers. Now, the people that supply NVIDIA, very similar chart patterns. They're all down. The only stock in the entire AI space that is still going up NVIDIA.
Oh, and
That's it.
I was
Palantir,
gonna
but
say
that's sideways.
Yeah, Palantir is not a buyer of, I mean, in NVIDIA's supply chain.
Right.
So the people supplying and the people buying from, they're all universally down over the last 6 months. There are a couple that are up, but generally speaking, they're down. NVIDIA is the only winner here. It's a vampire.
Yeah, I know. They get all the money.
They do. But you know, that said, I know it makes you wonder, you know, what is, you know, where is the end game for this? Is it $4 trillion? That'd be about $165. Is this going to be a $4 trillion company? Licia, yes or no?
All I would say is wait till it trades 49.5 to go higher, and to go lower, watch for a close below 43.5. I wouldn't do anything in between there, unless I'm selling options.
There you go. Andrew, is NVIDIA a $4 trillion company?
It will get there. It's too close. It's too close not to get there now. I don't know if it gets there the end of this year, but it will get there. Its revenue is going to double again.
It will. It will.
Until somebody else starts selling the, you know, the revenue is going to double again. So,
speaking
Are you
of,
going to say no, Mark?
no, it's going to go to 4 trillion. It doesn't mean just because it will doesn't mean it should. So the speaking of will, I will invite on Hans Albrecht. He is our director of option income here at Option Pit, and you know, a lot of NVIDIA has now become an extremely widely held stock, Hans, and so a lot of people are sitting on massive gains, right? There are some people that were early believers, and there are some people that were late believers, and some people that were middle believers. But if I am doing really well with my NVIDIA stock, you know, what do I do here?
Morning, everybody. Yeah. So look, it's okay to be late to the party, right? You can still have a little bit of fun. You just don't want to get there when literally the last person's leaving. Then you might be a little bit too late. But look, NVIDIA is this great example of how, and it always makes me think of the gold rush, right? If you're the picks and shovels guy, if you're selling to all the people coming in, panning for gold, what do they need? They need the pans, they need the overalls, they need the kits, they need all the equipment, and you don't care if any particular one of them finds a whole bunch of gold. You just care that people keep, the dream is alive and people keep coming. Now, you might have a problem at some point down the line when people aren't finding gold and they realize that they're spending a whole bunch of money on equipment. Hey, this is a pretty good analogy. We may start to see it at some point where, you know, the return on investment isn't quite there based on the $1 trillion that they want to spend. But we're not there yet, right? So we're still in the midst of the gold rush and people buying things. So I think we're there. Everyone's sort of thinking, well, you know, what's the end game? And I think you want to be aware of that. I think this is a stock that at some point could probably drop 75%. The question is it from 250 or is it from 150 where we are now? So one of the things I wanted to mention just quickly, Mark, is that you guys were talking about volatility lately, and this relates to NVIDIA a little bit. I had somebody reach out to me yesterday and they were trading MSTR and they were short puts. And they were short puts, and they were like, okay, Hans, try to help me understand this. The stock's up $80 and my puts haven't really dropped at all. And I said, that, my friend, is something you're not going to read about in the textbooks. The volatility is exploding. This is a parabola. And we're starting to see, Licia, you're watching these charts. There are parabolas everywhere. We are in a parabola market again. And so when things go parabolic, well, that's movement, and volatility reacts and skew reacts. And I said, listen, this is skew. This is volatility exploding. And sort of strangely enough, you may need the stock to come down for volatility to come down, which is kind of contrary to how people think of the VIX and the SPY and how these things relate. But when you get extreme manias like this, you need a bit of calm for the market, for volatility to go, oh, and breathe the sigh of relief. And so I thought that was really interesting. And it reminded me, I didn't trade in 1987, but I remember people saying, there were people short calls and the market crashed. And they're like, why am I not making money on my calls? Well, that's volatility exploding. So we're getting a crazy kind of environment. Now, what does that mean? Now, that's not happening on NVIDIA, right? We had the earnings. And to your point, well, what do we do with this particular stock? I think number one, we want to be aware of what's going on out there. That's why I mentioned the parabolas. When I start seeing too many parabolas, I get a little bit nervous about markets.
There are a lot of them out there.
Exactly. That's a sign of I don't. What do we want to call it? Irrational exuberance, a la Greenspan, or animal spirits going a little bananas. I don't know.
Like 2021 is happening. The end of 2021. I mean, quantum computer has $360,000 of revenue, is worth $500 million. I mean, Rocket Labs. Andrew's 5,400% winner, RCAT. Now, folks, Andrew bought a calls and returned 5,400% in RCAT. Now, it was a great call, but I would say the valuation maybe got a little ahead of itself on that one.
Little.
Yeah, the analysts are going, wait a minute, I didn't learn that in MBA school. What tell me how that math works. So we're getting new math again, and this happens in markets, and that's why people get smoked. And that's why they need smart people like a few people here to explain to them how to do things in a more, limited risk way, and not do silly things like just go shorting MSTR, or MSTU is even better. Leveraged MSTR, and then there's options on it. How do you want to go faster than that? That's like steroids on steroids on steroids. It's getting crazy. Now, what do we do with NVIDIA? Okay, we've had a great run. There are a number of things you can do. Now, I happen to feel that upside skew isn't extremely expensive at this point. So I'm not super keen on getting aggressive right now selling covered calls just yet. But we do have slightly elevated vols in markets in general. And I can see we have a 150 call wall on NVIDIA. I don't think it's a massive wall, but it's where we have quite a bit of open interest. Kind of reminds me of where we were at 120. But as soon as that call wall disappeared after whatever it was, September expiry, then the coast was clear. That we were free to roam about the cabin, as I like to say. Until then, you had your seatbelt on. You were looking at that wall. If we can get through 150, I can see a move to 160, 165. So what I'd be doing is I'd be looking at somewhere around that 165 level. Maybe smack out some calls there, because if I were a little bit more nervous about the stock, I might bring that strike a little more at the money or closer to the money. Right now, I do want to give it a little bit of room, at least as I observe it over the next couple of weeks. That's a potential at 165. That's a potential 12% move up in the underlying. Then you get another couple of percent.
That's your $4 trillion mark for.
That's a pretty good trade there.
That's your $4 trillion mark for NVIDIA as well. So you could mark you'd be selling calls right at 4 trillion. I like that idea. The January 165 calls are $4.30. So call it about what? Almost 4% there. Almost 3% there. Plus you got 12% upside. And I think that makes some sense. If you're worried about downside, I mean, puts are cheap. Cheap. So, awesome. Hans, thanks for walking everybody through that. There's a lot of exciting things coming our way out of Hans that we can't really discuss yet, but he's working on some secret projects here, folks. Just you wait. And speaking of secret projects, there is one secret project that we're all wondering what what it's going to be, and that is what type of vehicle is Andrew's trading vehicle. In this segment, Andrew walks through how he's trading this week. This week, I believe he's looking at energy. And Hans, myself, and Licia, we all go grab a cup of coffee or smoke a cigarette or whatever it is we want to do. So take it away, Andrew.
Hey, hello, everybody. My vehicle this week, Lewis, you can put the slide up. And what do we, so again, I was surprised by this. So, in the evening when you're or in the morning, actually, for me, it's a full life. You look at volatility and what's going on. And I had like this nagging suspicion. So when I was talking with Mark earlier, I think the oil play till the inauguration, I think is a good play. So it's more like maybe like credit put spreads and things like that, which is kind of easy to do. Here though, I got a chart here of SPY, and I thought this was interesting. So 90-day volatility in SPY is the purple line. And I want you to notice since August, right? We had the August swoon, right? 500 SPY feels like a long way away. It's 100 points ago, right? And since then, we've had a pretty solid rally. What I would say is like long-term average volatility for SPY is going up. So it's that purple line. So it surprised me on how high it was. Again, we just had this election bump. Then we had the swoon. And again, all around 600. So I think surprisingly, volatility in SPX, SPY, I think is too low. And just what Hans and Mark and Licia were saying, you got all these kind of small parabolic moves going around. So eventually it's going to find its way into the broader index. And so when I look at trading something, I just, you just buy some juice. So I'm set up some, and it's surprised. So we have Thanksgiving next week. I bought some strangles yesterday, leaning a little long actually, because I think this Ukraine thing will blow over. It's odd, but it is causing, I believe, it's like a little pent up energy. And there's and again, volatility is relatively high, like close to close volatility, averaging around 15% in SPY. It's kind of high. It's also hard for VIX itself to stay low for too long because you've kind of got that longer term volatility or realized vols, it's kind of hanging around there because the market keeps moving. It's hard for VIX to go too low. And you can buy like 11 vol, 10 vol next week, even though we have the holiday. So pretty low. And even, after that into December. So I think volatility in the broad index is way too low, which is an opportunity. And the big reason is if it's low, liquidity providers don't have any reason to bid it up. So for retail people like me and you, you can go in and grab some and see what happens. But I think, again, the market is still leaning very bullish. If we didn't have this Ukraine thing, I think we'd be way above 600, SPY, 600, 610, still moving. I think NVIDIA would be higher. I think, again, oil pulling things higher. So there's a lot more going on just besides the Bitcoin mania. So, and I do think a lot of that froth, Mark was really correct, is frothy money is going there, leaving the vol kind of low in the broader indexes. And it doesn't take much. The cheaper your options are, the easier it is for them to make money when you have a move in the index. So what I would say is my trading vehicle this week is buy some juice and SPY, 1-2 week duration, hold on to it and see what happens. And that is the trading vehicle for this week.
All right. Well, that's great, Andrew. All right. Well, Andrew, what a great trading vehicle. We've got a couple minutes here. Andrew, I'd like to just talk about real briefly with you guys some of this frothiness that we've seen in some of these names. And again, I'm talking quantum computers. Quantum Computing Corp is, it's up another 25% this morning.
What's the ticker on that?
QUBT. Quantum Computing. It had over the last year $385,000 in revenue. Currently worth $562 million. Rocket Labs is worth $11 billion on $363 million worth of revenue. Lunar, $157 million in revenue, $2 billion in value. ASTS, that's AST Space Mobile, $2.5 million of revenue, $7 billion market cap. Even some names that long term are going to be worth a lot have maybe gotten over their skis. Palantir's worth $140 billion now, and it's got $2.6 billion of revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe a little over its skis. This feels very, and we're all old enough to remember this. This doesn't feel like 2021 when we were coming out of COVID and all this money awash. This is starting to feel a lot more like, for me, stop me if you think I'm wrong, I think this feels like .com.
I mean, it in some stocks, I think yes, but there's still a lot of stocks that aren't very expensive. But I would say that some of these are, they are kind of in goofy land here at the end of the year. I mean, just like Red Cat, right? Like Frank and I were talking about it. It was $3, and even then, I'm like, why are the calls so darn expensive? So like I did the Hans special, risk reversal, bought call, sold put, because the calls were so much, and then the stock doubles in price. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's why the calls were so expensive. Now the stock's trading $8. And it's the same thing. Like, so,
it's worth $560 million, but it has a reasonable $18 million in revenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to at Quantum Computer, same valuation, $365,000 in revenue.
Like, and they definitely sell stuff, and their business is growing, but it's amazing how fast, I think, and this is the thing in another stock, Reddit, right? Which actually was pretty good for us. We highlighted that a couple of weeks ago in the ticker highlight show. That's been a nice little win. But it's how fast money finds these names now because of social media. Like,
right, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Options. Go ahead, Licia. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking over you, but that's exactly what it is. There are all these speculators out there looking for the next thing that's going to take off, right?
Yep.
That's exactly what it is.
And they saw NVIDIA. They saw NVIDIA do a 10x since October 2022, right? And okay, is this going to be in Palantir now? Palantir has done a 10x in 2 years, Mark. You and I bought that stock, whatever. We were trading, and we were happy from like $10 to $14, and it's $65. So I still own some, by the way. But anyway, but there is that. There is that, and that's what gets people. Well, and I have to say that's what gets people excited about trading and investing and all that stuff. So SMCI, is it back from the dead? Is it back from the dead? That's another one. Like, are they gonna file financials? Like, and here's the thing: is it real or is it a fake? So anyway, and then social media pumps this stuff up so fast. And again, I think growth of options, growth of the options product, it does make it kind of fun when you buy a call and it goes to a gajillion.
Absolutely.
Like, I didn't expect it to do that well, but anyway,
there's a lot of FOMO out there. There's a lot of FOMO out there, Andrew. I get people, reaching out to me and saying, I kind of feel like I'm missing out here, and that's probably a a pretty common feeling. You know, your neighbor just made 3x on some stock or 10x on the options, and
Right.
people are getting that sort of, you know, feeling that they're missing out on something, and that just kind of drives more into it. It doesn't end well at some point, but we don't know where we are in that sort of that range of irrational exuberance. Are we in 98? Are we in 2000? We're not sure.
They got out of the market in 2022 and they never came back. And now all of a sudden
they're back.
You know, how do markets go? How does this SPX go from 6,000 to 7,000 in a fast? That's how, right? Everybody, they weren't there. So I think we are catching a little bit of that now, where folks sort of sat this year out and they'll turn it around and SPX is up 25%. They're like, wait a minute. You know, we were laughing about 4,000 when we started this show at last year. And
it's 6,000 now. It's crazy. But, you know, speaking of FOMO, you know, I follow along with almost all of Andrew's trades. And the one I don't is this RCAT one that returns 5,400%. And that comes out of capital gains, which is where Andrew and Frank uses his connections inside and outside of Washington, D.C. to kind of tell Andrew where money is going to be coming from and out of Washington, D.C. into Wall Street. And Andrew, being the 30-year option trading expert, designs and builds a trade. And of course, the fruits of his labor, 5,400% in RCAT. If you've got interest in that, feel free to email my team, support@optionpit.com, and they will gladly help you join Andrew and Frank in capital gains. So as we head into the open, we are running up against it. The S&P 500 is down about 6. The NASDAQ is down about 0.25%, call it 50 points. The Dow is slightly positive, up about 14 points. What are you guys thinking for today? Let's start with Licia J.
I say either a little inside day or we get a little boost. I think we get a little boost and break over the median line 59.65. Watch that space. If we get over there, we could rally. If it stops it, we have a little inside day.
Hans, what do you think?
I'm watching the coin space because it just is so fascinating. I had a broken wing fly yesterday that made 100%. So I'm looking to do another one of those. Now, other than the sector of insanity, I think oil's interesting. And I'm with Andrew on that one. I think it's interesting. It is a bit of a heartbreaker at times, but I think it's starting to look very, very good. These oil stocks are not expensive. And then another one, kind of in that sort of space, I guess, is Cameco. Look at CCJ. That started. I don't know what you think, Lisa, but that stock, I got in. It's sort of around 52, and it's starting to look really good. And I think uranium's interesting. I think Trump is supportive. I think we need it. We see the big cap techs getting involved in a very deep way in the uranium space. I think that's kind of one to kind of watch.
Buyer of the 75 calls from March yesterday, 5,000 times. This is a Canadian company. They're slowly entering the top 10 in the Canadian market in terms of market cap, right?
On that note, Mark, I read this morning there was a chart put out and it showed who underperforms the worst in terms of stock picking in funds versus index. Canadians are up there. Canadians are at the top. I'm like,
I was just going to say, way to represent.
We're really good at hockey and maple syrup drinking contests, but you know, other than that, apparently not great anywhere else.
All right, Andrew, what are you thinking today?
I think today is going to look like yesterday. We're going to get that gyrating action in the morning to some degree, and then we slowly rally again. I'd like to see vol drop some more, but I'm kind of sanguine on it should, but it's not, which always makes me a little reticent. So, but that's what I think. Get a little chop in the morning and then kind of meander a little higher. Market wants 6,000 SPX, so it's too close not to get it.
Yeah, might take the weekend for vol to crash out. But you know, one thing to be aware of is that the S&P is 59.48 S&P futures are 59.70. Got real close to 6,000 yesterday. They've been over it. I think you'll get a test out of on the S&P futures. Bless you, Licia.
Bless you, Licia.
Thank you.
Which currently trade about so the spread between the cash and the future is about 20 points for those keeping score. So I think we're going to get a 6,000 test on S&P futures. That would put us up about $32 for 30. So, call it 0.5%. I think we'll end up positive today and into the slow week next week. All right, folks. We are up against it. We are out of time. So for and folks, programming note, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, the shortened day, we will not be here next Friday. We may put out some content for you guys, but we will not be here live. We will be here the first Friday of December. And we will miss you next week, but we hope everybody has a lovely American Thanksgiving. I know Canadian Thanksgiving already occurred. Happy belated, Hans. But we hope you have a lovely American Thanksgiving. So for Hans Albrecht, the income imperial overlord, and Andrew T. Giovinazzi, the Viking of volatility, and of course, Licia J. Leslie, my partner in crime and queen of the candles. I am Mark Sebastian, your only option. This was Option Pit Live. We'll see you in 2 Fridays.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.